Microsoft decided to get the ball running right away with the 360 generation by releasing it an entire year before the PlayStation 3 and the Nintendo Wii. But that's not all that happened, because they were sitting in a void. Halo 3 was ways out from releasing, and they needed a system seller. And so they called over to Epic Games. Yes, that's right, the Fortnite makers themselves, and said, we need something, and we need something big. And they went all in on this brand new IP. Something that could stand side by Halo.
I mean, have you seen me, though? I don't think anything should be standing side by side with me. I am next, top of the line, greatest thing to ever.
Listen, Cortana, I'm gonna cut you off right there and lay down some real law, because I don't need you interrupting me on this video today, because you got replaced in Halo Infinite, so you're not that irreplaceable. So this time, I would like you to shut up and be quiet.
Whatever, I guess I'll just be moving on then. But just know, I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna be meaner than ever before.
Yeah, whatever you say, sweetheart, but I'm gonna get into some real man stuff. Because you see, Epic Games wasn't gentrified slop that it's turned into now with its Fortnite and its garbage where everything looks like sunshine and rainbows. No, they came to make a statement. They brought in a gun with a chainsaw and the entirety of the cast of Predator, basically. It was a bunch of musclehead meatheads that were timed to face off against atrocities. That's what Gears of War was gonna be. An over-the-top, third-person, tactical-esque game that reinvented what third-person shooters could be by adding in intense cover-based mechanics that games would endlessly rip off in this same era. And that's how you know a game is good. Look at God of War clones. Look at Halo killers. Look at the Doom, whatever the Doom ones were called. Doom clones. That's right, Doom clones. That's how you know a game makes a huge difference. But you see, it didn't for me. I played Gears of War and I thought it was fine. I thought it had an interesting concept. Instead of aliens or zombies, these were mole people, or whatever they're called. The Locusts. See, I've already forgotten the monsters they fought. I went into this, and even the first big moment where a character you supposedly are supposed to care for is stranded in the middle of a firefight. This is an intense situation, and I was there for it. Early game, I want this guy to survive so I can get to know him a bit better, but it's not that kind of game. This is a moment that I truly loved in the first Gears of War, but it also shows the biggest issues with the first Gears of War. The lack of substance, the lack of really anything. It was a good trial game. It was a good idea that was never fully encapsulated upon. Maybe I had to be there, maybe I had to be in the moment, but I truly felt nothing. And that sucks when a scene this intense, where a monster comes and beats a man you should care about, and takes his very life in front of his comrades and his brothers. This should be a moment that hits. This should be a moment that makes me want to go to the ends of the earth to find this monster who has hurt my friends and me so much. But I did not care. Now, there's nothing fundamentally wrong with Gears of War 1. In fact, the big body movement, the slam against cover, their cartoony oversized bodies mashing up against other cartoonily oversized monsters to show the severity of the world that we're in, especially when you come in contact with normal looking citizens, just to show that these steroids meatheads are what is needed to fight back. The cool gun design when it comes to the chainsaw gun and others. In fact, the limited arsenal in this game I think is one of its best qualities. You know when you pick up a gun whether you like it or not, and within the same firefight you will find yourself getting another gun that you do like. And I played this entire game with a friend, and he kind of walked away with the same mentality that I had, that it was fun. But the last boss fight was an absolute nightmare. It was miserable to play. Everything else in the game was fine, but we didn't really take much fun from it, and it didn't make us hungry to go hunt out and play another sequel. And in fact, for over the last year and a half, maybe 2 years, I'm not sure exactly how long, that's where I left it, on the silly bad end note of this last boss fight. You see, I didn't play this back when it came out. I played it in recent times, so I missed the multiplayer spree of it. I missed the fun chatting. I had to be there in that moment for that, to get that nostalgia for this game. I only had the story, and what the story left me with was, it's fine. The idea was amazing, the execution I thought was flawed, but this isn't the end of my story with Gears of War. I know you're sitting 5 minutes into the video thinking, wow, he hates Gears of War, he thinks it's a terrible thing, he's shitting on the thing I love. But you see, I just didn't understand Gears of War as it sat after the first game. But that's until fast forward to today, when I had a friend who told me, hey, have you ever played Gears of War? And I said, it's fine. I've had other people tell me that the games really don't start until Gears of War 2, but I haven't really found anybody to play them with, and the first game was kind of annoying without co-op. It also didn't leave me hungry for more. In fact, the last boss fight made me not want to touch another Gears of War game, so I kind of just left it at that. But he seemed interested, and I knew I needed content. So whether I liked the game or not, I would have a video to make, seeing that I missed the chance to make it on the first one with so much time being passed. So I decided to fire up Gears of War 2. And I have to tell you right now, if you think that I was here to shit on Gears of War and its sequel, you'd be wrong. Because after playing Gears of War 2, I understand. I truly now feel and know what Gears of War is about. More than the first game could ever show me. The first game was an idea, it was a concept. It was, here's this thing. Isn't it kinda cool? Wait till we show you more. And Gears of War 2 decided to show me more. It built on what the first game did to a truly more amazing, epic degree that I never thought humanly possible. Because, like I said, I wasn't over the moon with the mechanics of the first game. I am a in-your-face FPS guy. I am a Max Payne third-person shooter guy. Cover-based mechanics in a game are something I look at and think, it's not my thing. I'll give it a shot if I want to, maybe put it on easy so I can run and gun. But Gears of War 2 showed me something. It showed me a darker, deeper side of this world, and any gripe I could have with cover-based shooting, it seemed to change it and move the game's needle just enough to where I could almost play this bitch like a Dark Souls game, doing an alligator death roll all over the map. I also felt like when I hit cover, it meant something. It meant that I was overpowered and needed desperately to seek refuge, or I would die and be sat crawling along the floor waiting for my friends to revive me. There was something different about this game right off the bat, and it was just enough difference where I took note and was having much more fun than I had with the first entry. And sure, I wasn't 100% sold yet. This game hadn't quite placed a hand on my head and asked if I had seen the light. I was just noticing small things. Another thing I was starting to take note of was the better voice acting, the more dialogue being exchanged between the individual characters. I felt like they all mattered and they were all important. Much more than the first game. Yeah, there were some great lines and some quotable moments from the first game, but it almost felt hollow. It felt like they were there to be cool. It was there to move the mark in the, ooh, so cool, how cool was that moment? But it wasn't there to build them as people. And when I was hearing them chatter this time, it almost felt like they were friends, like they've been doing this for years. Like this is just another day in their hell of a life. In fact, even atmospherically, this game seemed to have bigger stakes. And that's crazy, because the first game, we felt like we had ended it all. It felt like it buttoned it up. But that wasn't it. This is bigger. This is The true moment where we need to change the tides. The stakes felt like they were going to build and strengthen more than ever before. And the soundtrack and the atmosphere was pushing me toward this whole realization. Take, for example, the character Ty. In the first game, I forgot he even existed in that game, to be honest with you. I forgot most of these characters were even people. The ones I remembered were Dom, Marcus, and Coltrane. Those were the people I knew, and everyone else I'd completely memory hold their entire existence. But the moment Ty enters the scene in this game, he makes a statement that he is important. In fact, when every single one of these characters who had been in previous entries enter into this version of the game, they are important and they're here to stay. They mean business because they matter, not just as another soldier to help you at your side, but they're your brothers. They are your next best thing to family you will ever get in this post-apocalyptic hellscape. They are what matters. Every single person is necessary and important to you. And this game likes to highlight that. And when big things happen, like when Ty and Izzy face off against this chainsaw-wielding staff maniac, that you know that you want to see the outcome. You want to make sure they're okay, and that pushes you further into the story. Now, I hadn't been gripped yet. I still feel like there was improvements, but I didn't know what they were going to do with them, what the direction was going to be. All I knew is the game felt better, it looked better, it moved better, the characters seemed to matter more, the chatter during gunfights was interesting, the development was going in the right direction. But you see, after playing the first game where there were some deaths, but if there were, I didn't remember them. This game mattered. This game was important. This game was pain. And I didn't realize the pain that could be felt in a story as hard as I felt the pain the moment Ty walked out of an enclosed chamber held by the locusts. This game wasn't messing around. Because although I've been accustomed to video game deaths and movie deaths, there was something impactful and powerful about this one. Because it showed a broken man. The moment Ty steps out of that, it's not Ty anymore. I don't know what he is or what's left of him, but it's not Ty. But in their delusions, Marcus throws him a gun thinking, we've been through hell, let's give them hell back. We're not playing around. But what he did was he handed a broken man a way out. And this is not what I was expecting to see in the game of Ultra Giga Chads. I expected some people would die and I would just go on punching people in the face. I didn't expect to have my train ticket punched with the Kurt Cobain special. Knowing that war waits for no man. That we can't stop an apocalypse because one of our friends died. Because someone was broken, because we saw somebody dismembered or the world ending, we had to make a stand and we had to move on. We had to button up and keep fucking grinding. Keep pushing forward. And that was something this game had shown to me. Me and my friend were not ready for this. In the slightest. Like I said with the first game, I really didn't give a shit about any of them. And he hadn't even played the first game, so he had nothing to base it off of. But I felt like both of us in that moment felt a sense of dread. When Ty was with us in our group, we were excited whichever direction the game pushed us. Whoever got Ty felt like they were going to be okay. Like they had the better of the two options. Not that Carmine is a bad character or anything, but he's a faceless character, which means that he is eventually going to die. And we thought he would die first. So to watch somebody who had been with us, fighting by our side, that we were excited to have at our beck and call, there in front of us as a broken man torn to shreds, was painful. It felt somehow in the moment ceremonious and unceremonious at the exact same time. Now, I had my critiques of The Last of Us Part 2. In fact, I don't like the game. I thought what they did to Joel had no real pertinence. It didn't feel like it had staying power. It felt like it was there just to shock us. And though Ty's death was shocking and atrocious, it was impactful. It mattered. It was important. And I can't stress enough how every moment after that death felt more important than the last, more important than almost any other game I've ever played in terms of story beats. It lit a goddamn fire under my ass. And I even would go down to the depths of inside a giant worm and knew that I had to bust my way out of there at all goddamn costs because I had two goals. End this goddamn scourge and save Dom's wife wherever she might be, knowing very well that she could be in the exact same state as Ty, but there was a chance she wasn't, and I cared. And as I watched Carmine die on the ground, a character that I thought I wouldn't give a shit about too, that I wouldn't get accustomed to and want to care about, even this faceless character, I felt the impact of his death. Though his death was very unceremonious and it felt like you moved on way too quick, it still mattered and it still hurt. Not to the same extent as Ty's, but it was another kick in the goddamn balls, kick in the ass that I needed to push forward. I was in it. I was hooked. This was the moment that I was grabbed, something I had begged the first game to do over and over and over again. This game had done it, and I didn't care what needed to be done. I was finishing this son of a bitch. And I have to say, moving on from all the death and tragedy, this game is gorgeous. This is a much better, more interesting looking game than the last one. The last one, it felt like I would go from broken street tops to underground to broken street tops, and it felt like I was just doing things, doing the motions. This game, I'm inside monsters, destroying them from the inside. Something I thought was so neat. When you get the cinematics, they're big, they're impactful, but they don't take the controller out of your hand for too long. They feel like they're there for a purpose, and that purpose is to provide you with context, to provide you with big moments that you couldn't play through, that wouldn't be better to play through because you get to do the cool shit. Like cutting ventricles to a giant worm's heart to watch it bust through the ground after you cut those ventricles. Like, obviously you're doing the cool shit inside, but you're seeing the ramifications on the outside of the world. And it's just so cool. It's a symphony. Every single piece is working for a greater cause. And hell, there was even a moment here where I started thinking back to games like Doom, where you would have these moments of quiet between the storm, and how Gears of War, even in this moment where you just busted through a worm's internals after cutting multiple hearts to shred, and you just want to take a break. These guys deserve it. But there's no stopping. They don't have the manpower. This world's gonna end and you have to stop it. It's not somebody else's job. You need to pull up your goddamn bootstraps and get the ball rolling. Otherwise, no one else will. It's important. It's duty. I've never played a game that felt like everything that I was doing was impactful, to where I didn't feel like I had the opportunity to stop and smell the roses. This is the first game I can think of. I've played some games that I love. I love God of War 3. It's one of my favorite games of all time. Halo 2 is a masterpiece. And this game was heading in that direction. And it wasn't heading there slowly or creeping there. I thought it was going to ease its way in, maybe to being okay. No, this game had hit me with the masterpiece right away. It had nothing to do but lose me. And I didn't see that coming because it wasn't slowing down. You enter a laboratory because something's off. You are told to go there, so you listen to orders and proceed. Where you're greeted by an artificial intelligence who seems to push your buttons at every turn and try to be an obstacle in every sense of the word. But this is war. This is not a time where you complain and you look around and say, well, the door's locked. What are we gonna do? Nah, you get a goddamn bomb, walk down a hallway, being half unarmed, only being able to use your sidearm, because you haven't the luxury to deal with bullshit like locked doors. And much like this coffin of bombs that you're hauling, it feels weighty, just like every single thing in this game. Like I said with the first game, the only thing that really felt weight was when you slammed your body against cover, and the size when you ran. This game, the weight is in every single ounce of everything you do. Every push forward has weight and has importance. Take, for example, this whole facility that we're progressing through. It's laden with traps and all sorts of turrets to stop you at every turn. You have to hit switches and move your way through cautiously, or you can die at any second, while the AI tries to push back at the exact same time. The AI ends up being a scientist who, when he initially got the facility, was supposed to figure out how to cure children. But instead, he started experimenting on them to later make them into the locusts. Now, at first, I have to say that I was kind of a little disappointed that this is where the locusts came from. An old Frankenstein monsters type of creation instead of just a weird creature that came from the ground. Because in this mission, you fight the early variations before they kind of upgraded or evolved to what they are now. And they're kind of creepy and scary, and I really like the idea of them. And I didn't even want to believe in this moment that this would eventually become the locusts, because I like the idea of back when humans were still in that ooga booga phase, that there was another like branch of creatures that were cave dwelling creatures, and humanity at one time beat them off to be the main people. They were that. There's a theory about it. I don't know the exact theory, but I've always found it very interesting, and I thought Gears of War was expanding on that. But nope, ye old folly of man situation. The same thing I've seen a billion times over and over again. Monster, man created, obviously, evolves their intelligence much beyond what they were originally created with, to then hate their own creators. It is a Frankenstein story in that regard, and I really just didn't like that. I don't hate it. I hope that they expand on it in Gears of War 3 when I eventually do get to play that game. But for right now, it just felt like everything else was pushed in a very new and fresh direction. And to find out that these creatures that you've been fighting for the last 2 games are just Frankenstein, a little disappointing. I don't know, other people might find it very, very deep and cool, and I love the way they did Frankenstein. I, however, found it to be kind of a low point, and the fact that you really don't see these abominations that are in this facility ever again after this game kind of makes me think back to Halo, and how when they had a big flood opening up the flood to the public, and you're like, oh man, this game is not what I thought it was going to be. This is a horror game now. I better clutch my cojones and run through this son of a bitch. This game just kind of has that feeling, and you feel like you're in Halo 1 in the Pillar of Autumn dealing with all these horrible monstrosities, and then you never really deal with them again. It felt underutilized. Now, it is cool for tidbits of lore dropped here, but as for a main thing to push the story forward, and after all the genius pushes I've had beforehand, left me a little underwhelmed. But enough against my gripes. I do want to talk about something I did find really, really cool, and that's fighting a giant fish. I don't know why it makes me so happy. It's just something that I enjoyed. It makes me think of that weird-ass game I played for the channel. It led that game with Mad Hazard, the Duke Nukem knockoff, but in the Gears of War style game, and there's a point where you're fighting the Kraken or something, and it's the most annoying, tedious boss fight I've ever been through. It just felt like it kept going and going and going. And so when I played against this giant fishy over here in Gears of War land, this boss fight was fun. Everything kind of pushed the right direction. It never felt too tedious. I didn't feel like I was shooting tentacles for 400 minutes so that I can save my wife from ending up like hentai. This one just felt like a good, well-designed boss fight. I was enjoying it. I felt a little bit of fear from time to time. The thing is scary as shit looking. The fact that the idea that Marcus has is, Dom's like, how are we gonna kill it, man? How are we gonna kill it? From the inside. I liked that. It was cool. Made me get all shivery in my penis area. I really enjoyed what they did here. The boss fight was fun. Going inside its mouth to throw grenades down its throat. Bussy. Just a really, really cool idea. Just a fun whole experiment. And it's such a contrast to, it's one of those things where you look at the copy will never be as good as original. It's just a cheap copy. And that's how Mad Hazard ended up being, even though Mad Hazard did have some really, really good ideas in terms of fighting different enemies throughout the era. The end result is just kind of cringy. This boss fight, the one that one's based off of, has certified Riz straight from Ohio. It's got all the gats, baby. I don't know, it was one time in a video where I could actually look at something and say, this is the masterpiece, and that was its cheap copy, and to see it in real time is kind of cool. It's just a funny coincidence that this game's so hard and gritty, and then its cheap clone is a weird, satirical, goofy game. I don't know why they chose the style of Gears of War to make E-Led, but that's another game. This is another video. But before we get to this last big thing, I want to brace everyone. I myself wasn't ready. Again, this is another moment in this game where it took me and blindsided me. Maybe not as hard in the face or in the dick as it did with Ty. It didn't hit me as from the left side. I mean, the fact that Ty was even still alive was a surprise, and this kind of retreads that same ground. But there's a moment here where I think it needs to be emphasized, my mind space, when I was playing the game. When I meet this whole area and we find out there's a chance that Dom's wife is alive, that she was a part of this group that had gone down further into these caverns to try to find safety, which I don't understand why they would do that, but they did. That's kind of the direction they went. But the idea that she might be in one of these little chambers, and we already know what happens to you once you're captured by these creatures, these locusts. It's not great, it's never cool. But the idea that there was a chance, the hope that I had, really put me in this mind state of, I don't know, positivity? I was very, very excited to see the direction we were going to go and the hope that I had, because unlike the last game, this game had a lot more hope and a lot more driving force of what felt like happiness. Not happiness, but that's the wrong term. It's more an idea of there's a chance that we will see a brighter future because of this game. So at times, even though there is some true atrocities in this game, it has this positivity in the lingering background where you think that everything's gonna be okay even with the loss you faced and the pain you've had. It's this weird thing that pushes through, that even past the deaths you've already seen, there's hope moving forward, and a lot of that hope is spawned from like Dominic in and of himself having this idea that he will be reunited with his wife again. I don't think that positivity can be understated enough, because when you finally find the meat box that your wife ends up being in, and Dominic has this moment where you're watching Eddie cut into it, there's so much hope and so much pure innocence of like, this is it, I finally am reuniting Dom with his wife. He's carried her goddamn picture around forever. This is the moment when they open the door and she looks just like she did in the picture. You've tricked yourself. You know she's not going to look like this. You know this isn't the real moment that he's having. This is in his head. He's remembering her how she looks. But you're tricking yourself into believing this. Because like I stated, there is this aesthetic of hope in this game. Much different from what the last game presented you with. But as this camera starts panning around and she hits her knees and you know something's wrong, there's a part of you that's breaking. The pain in this game is not understated, and I feel like even though I have to kind of emphasize that there is hope in this game, seeing Dom's wife, as disheveled as she is, breaks you internally. Nothing else that I could ever have a gripe with in this game, or I'm not a biggest fan of the shooting style of cover-based games. Nothing can understand how wonderfully dark and beautiful this moment was. How knowing that I'm sitting here making this video while my loving wife's in the other room, and just picturing her in this same situation and knowing what I'd have to do. I'd have to put her out of her misery. I'd have to put a button on this portion of my life and move on. To try to at least try to save the rest of humanity so nobody else has to deal with my goddamn hardships that I'm dealing with right at this moment. These are the big moments in storytelling. These are the big moments in games and movies and everything. And the fact that this game was able to pull this off in two similar but very different, emotionally impactful moments in this game is the true demonstration of incredibly powerful storytelling. Even rewatching the footage for this video right now, seeing her cold, dead eyes, and knowing that he has to put a bullet in her head to pull her out of her misery, hurts me. It hurts me deep down. And they can't be stated enough. They can't be emphasized enough. I could do hours of breakdowns on other videos on how cool the lore is, or how crazy the Dark Souls world is, but nothing as is important as this moment. Because to me, it hit. I feel like to anyone who has a loved one, who has a significant other, to see your significant other that broken and beaten, to where the life has left their eyes, knowing that it's time to pull the plug, it's just a powerful statement. Now, the one gripe I have about this is after this moment, Dom kind of goes back to his jokey self, and I felt it does give you that false hope, and it does a good direction of how the push to the end of this game is. It just kind of, I feel like, downplays the severity of it. And I understand that when dealing with loss, there's many different ways to go about it. Myself, am a type of guy who just starts constantly cracking jokes, so I get this. And no, it can be quite jarring when it's put into a narrative. But from a personal standpoint, I do understand. A narrative one, it doesn't quite land as much. But at the same time, I'm glad that it didn't keep harkening back to this moment and trying to just really draw out those emotional moments. It's like, no, we don't have time to feel. And it balances on that first death very well at the same time by saying, yeah, we don't have time for your fucking problems. We don't have time to deal with the loss of the people you love. We have a monster staring us in the goddamn face. And if we don't do something about it, we're going to have a million more Marias, Ties, and Carmines throughout this universe. And there is nothing we can do about it. Only there is. There is something. So the more we sit around feeling sorry for ourselves, the more we sit around complaining that the world sucks, the worse off it's going to get for everyone else. And we are the few people that can stand in its goddamn way and shove a boot up its ass, because that's the American way. Rest in peace, Toby Keith. I put a lot of aesthetic on the storytelling in this game, which it deserves. I've spent a lot of time gushing over it and talking about the tragedy and the optimism going forward, but I don't feel like I've spent a lot of time talking about how gorgeous this game is. And in the later portions of this game, when you're dealing with their kind of main city or temple or whatever you want to call it, but the artists behind the design of the city knew what they were doing, 100%. They took this idea of what we've previously seen in this world we've been in, and you see it kind of in the first game, but everything just kind of seems wet and brown. This one took the ideas from like a gothic aesthetic and plasters it front and center. This is cool. I understand exactly what it's going for, and it hits so hard. It is some of the most gorgeous buildings and doors and hallways I have seen in this series thus far. And I also love the ability of the fact that they don't tone down the brutality. Take this hallway, for example. The fact that there's just people spread out on these weird plaques that almost looks like you'd put a book there to read from, but instead it's a person's organs. That's sick. You do eventually progress all the way through to the end where you finally meet the High Queen ahead of all of these monsters, and she's hot. She's really freaking hot. I love the games used to do that, even though there was a big bad at the end and she probably should look ugly. Nah, dude, she's got some nice titties and stuff. I'm about it. I'm about it, dude. I was making jokes that what if you were in this world, man, and the only way to stop it was to have sex with the main leader of these people, and I didn't know she was this hot. And so when we got there, my buddy was like, "Oh, dude, I'll take that bullet. I'm sorry, but I'll do it. I guess I'll have to be the guy that falls on that sword." And I was like, "Damn it, I wanted that to be me." But her basic premise is she's going to dip out, leave the general to take care of you, and she's going to attack the main city, this main huge last beacon of hope of humanity. And yeah, this next boss fight, this area where you fight the guy that killed Ty, is fun. It's funny that the last game had this main end boss fight that you're fighting the whole game toward, and it sucked so bad. Now I've heard the argument that the reason it plays so different than everything else is to keep you on your toes and to really push how tough that boss fight was. No, it just sucked. It just was garbage and I hated it. This was fun. It felt like you were trying to learn the boss's mechanics and what he was going to do next and figure out his patterns. It was cool. I loved it. And on top of that, that's not even his death. He escapes on a reaver and then you get on a reaver and you follow his ass. That is sick. I mean, this whole game I've been shooting reavers and dealing with their atrocities from actually probably the last 2 games. Again, I can't remember much of the first game other than I hated the last boss fight and the one dude got stabbed in the back. But in terms of cool game design, this was badass. I do have a lot of gripes when it comes to the vehicles in this game for the most part, but this one was fun. I really enjoyed just being on this bitch and shooting shit. My buddy was on another one shooting shit as well. It was nice that we didn't have to control them because the vehicles controls in this game on the other stuff you're doing is just really bad. I always hated when I was put into a vehicle and I had to be the one driving. It was terrible, but I love that this one was just kind of a running gun type thing. It felt a lot like Dark Watch, where you first get on the horse and you're shooting the vampire. Now, if you don't understand that reference, then you suck as a person. Go play Dark Watch and then come back and I might love you. Now, this isn't the coolest thing I've ever done. It is just a really well done on rails section. I like that when you look forward, you get one type of like grenades or something, and then when you look backwards, you got a machine gun. It's well designed. It's an interesting twist from the normal on rails thing. It's cool that I am fighting that same boss fight in the air. It really elevates what the boss fight becomes. Now, is it the greatest thing ever? Again, no, but it's something that's memorable, and I will look back at this game and be like, yeah, dude, I remember riding on a reaver, shooting another bigger reaver, while knowing that that was the bastard who killed Ty, and I can't wait to watch him burn in the fucking ground. And don't think I'm missing how gorgeous this whole section is either. I was so enamored but with looking at everything. You look up at the skybox and the city up in the horizon. Everything's so pretty. It's probably one of the most gorgeous moments of the game, where it's not really about the aesthetic. It's just like a normal human Earth, but beautiful. In this dark world, we get a moment of beauty, and it's still dealing with blowing people's assholes through their mouth. Now, the end of the game is kind of convoluted. It's not like overly convoluted, but basically Marcus's dad had this idea that if they were to sink the city on top of the Locust's city, they could really put a dent in the war effort and shorten this war by a substantial margin. Well, at the exact, or not really drop the city, but just flood that whole area and kill a bunch of locusts that way. Now, the locusts themselves want to destroy the upper city, but leave their area alone where it wouldn't be flooded, which makes this end of the game a rush to see who can do the most destruction first, because the locusts are trying to fall in on the city while you guys are standing strong in your own little Alamo while evacuating citizens, so it's possible to drop this entire city into the fucking ground and flood these monsters back to the hell in which they came. I like this. It adds a lot of tension. This whole end build-up had tons of tension and build up without trying to be another edge. Oh, look, we're gonna kill somebody else type thing. It just seemed to really flow put you in this flow state that I can't love enough. Nothing really stands out here. It just feels like a really cool flow state and push to a final grand overture of wonderful time and a wonderful game. And it does give you the Hammer of Dawn, which was one of the standouts in the last game. It's just so cool. I love that I'm just dropping bombs from satellite powers, because that's kind of one of the weapons that turned the tide of war from us being obliterated to having a chance. And to get to reutilize it in this game, and yeah, dude, I utilized the shit out of this. In the first game, I wish that there was more areas that I could have utilized it. This game, it seems like they really give you enough time to really chew into the greatness of this weapon. And when you do get down into the depths to start destroying the things holding up the city above, you get a ride on one of those giant monster things. I can't remember what they're called. Leave it in the comments down below. I can't remember every single name of every single creature in this fucking series, but I did love that I was on the back of this monster and we were just kind of, bruh, I'm Godzilla, bitch. Bruh, Godzilla. Yeah, it was cool. I like being fighting a Godzilla monster. It's awesome. I'm shooting giant rockets and machine guns, and we're blowing down pillars. Watching the locusts turn into giant red pits of mist. It reminds me of that game from the Xbox original, Mecha Assault. I loved those games. They were so much fun, and this was just revitalizing that same energy, and it's such a throwback feeling to a game that's been long forgotten. Just great moments. And when you do end up dealing with this kind of green mucus shit, and there's this internal infighting going on at the exact same time, like I said, there's a lot of shit getting thrown at the wall at the end here, and it builds to this chaos. But basically, the locusts get infected by this slime. It's the same slime that had killed Carmine, I believe. And this slime then turns them into like super beasts. And I don't know. There was a lot going on here. I felt like it got kind of convoluted. But at the same time, it is cool that the monster you're riding on gets infected by this slime. And you're like, here's the idea. We're going to let it keep building up, and then we're going to hit it with the Hammer of Dawn. And you hit it with the Hammer of Dawn with zero build-up time. Usually there's a ton of time to build up. So turn the monster into a giant fucking nuke. That's right, baby. We're using flesh nukes in this thing. Days gone where fleshlights were the main thing to use. Now we're using flesh nukes. And you get this happy ending. There's nothing real crazy about it. The queen does talk to say that there will be more alluding to a third game, which I will eventually play. There's a moment where Marcus is worried his main squeeze is gone, but don't worry, she's alright. And I loved this game. I think I'm a massive fan. Again, I never thought it would be possible that Gears of War 2 would be so good that it would turn me a full 180 to where I don't think that this game series is mid anymore. I purposely didn't make a video on the first Gears of War because of how mid I thought the game was. And I knew that there would be no point in me going out there and pissing off an entire fan base. Yeah, it'd be good for clicks and shit, but at the same time, I didn't feel like I even had enough to talk about where I found the video was even interesting. When I played the game originally, I thought I had a part of a video done. It was boring as shit, and I thought, wow, yeah, this isn't even worth my time, and I quit playing my second playthrough. So then here comes along Gears of War 2, and I could see me playing this game almost yearly. I could see me playing this next year just to refresh myself on this game. I don't know. I don't know. It's going to be a game that I'm definitely going to come back to time and time again. It's such a fun experience, and I can't suggest it enough. But thank you guys all for watching, and until next time, keep gooning, baby.